right, he's with us till 5 after next hour. Then David Knight takes over, and he's Dr. Andrew Wakefield. He has the new film out, going through film festivals. Robert De Niro chose it for his Tribeca-founded event, and we've had other film festivals, like in Houston and places, threatened. There were also other pressure put, obviously, on the New York Festival, and it just shows the control going on that's happened. But separately, I'm not going to go through the whole saga. Andrew Wakefield and his partner's been exonerated in England. They came out and said it was all a hoax. I have a giant stack of mainstream news articles, New York Times, you name it, government studies, admitting that autism and mental illness and so many other things is linked to toxicity in the gut and imbalances, cancer, you name it. So we're going to talk about this today. I know he likes to specifically just get into the facts and his own research study he did, but wow, they tried to just pick him out as the bad guy because he was one of the trailblazers and destroy him, but it turned out there were British studies before his finding basically the same thing. So the fact is they want to distract away from autism from 1 in 30,000 to 1 in 58. They want to distract from this, but he joins us to talk about the film Vaxxed, produced right here in Austin, some of it shot here, some of the interviews honored, and the fact that their attempt to censor it, I think, will cause what we talked about last hour, Billy Corrigan of Smashing Pumpkins, the founder of Smashing Pumpkins, the Streisand effect, where somebody was showing her house, if you don't know what it is, and she complained about it on the internet, and then it became a national news story. They try to cover it up so it explodes. Robert De Niro on Vax. The movie is something that people should see, close quote. I'm not anti-vaccines. I want safe vaccines. And that's basically what Wakefield's always said. Doctor, great to have you.
Great to be back on the show.
We've only got 5-6 minutes in this segment, long segment coming up, but what's the big news in front of us? I mean, obviously, the cover-up's imploding, the fact that they've got vaccine damage funds they try to keep secret. What does it mean that they're trying to censor this film?
Well, yeah, Alex, I'm 20 years into this battle now, and it could have all continued the way it was going until one man stepped forward, a senior scientist, a CDC insider, saying, I was in charge of a study where we tested a hypothesis. We found that MMR vaccination was causally associated with autism, and we hid the findings. We hid it for 14 years, and we have known for 14 years that this vaccine is causally associated with autism, and we have concealed it. We put millions of American children in harm's way, and I can live with that no longer. And he came forward, and now the world is...
That's right. We have huge whistleblowers. We've got Merck whistleblowers, CDC whistleblowers. It was first at ABC News years ago that they had that meeting in the minutes where the head of the CDC says, I won't give this to my grandkids, but now it's coming out. Tell folks about the whistleblower.
The whistleblower tested the hypothesis. He ran a study which he designed. If you took this, if this were a money laundering ring, Alex, this guy would be the accountant. He would be the last person that you want to be plea bargaining with the feds. This is a guy who designed the study, did all the analysis, had the data, and said we hid data. Ultimately, we just destroyed data. They got a big garbage can into the room and they destroyed the data. They didn't want anyone to see. He thought that would be a crime. Quite rightly, it was a felony. These are federal documents. He kept the documents and they thought they'd been destroyed. He brought them forward years later and confirmed.
And no wonder they don't want your film seen, because he's gone to Congress. He hasn't gotten a lot of attention. He's the head guy. This came out a few years ago, almost no attention. You try to make a film about it, no wonder they want to suppress it.
Absolutely, and now that the film has come out, it's kind of caught them off guard. They've then put huge pressure on everybody from De Niro right the way across the board to stop people. They are saying, and this is the pharmaceutical industry as well as the government, don't get it wrong, this is the government and the pharmaceutical industry telling us what we can say, what we can see, what we can think, and ultimately what we will inject into our children's bodies and our own. There is something gone horribly wrong with democracy in this country, and we've got to seize it back, and this film is now the door opening on that.
Well, you're admirable, because every time I have you in here, you're at the cutting edge of working with families, trying to put the truth out. You name it, lawsuits. You've just been proven, vindicated in the spades, a true trailblazer. I know you don't like that, but a true hero, Andrew Wakefield. You never want to talk about yourself being vindicated. It's always, we have a top whistleblower, the head of the program, hired to cover it up, did all the studies. He's now gone public. The media won't cover it. You're just still worried about the millions of kids getting brain damaged.
Alex, it's not about me. It's not about me at all. I'm just a guy trying to do a job and being prevented. So I'm really just obstinate, but I'm not going to go away. I'm not going to duck this issue. It's far too important. It's going to be, from the estimates in the movie, 1 in 2 children born in 2032 are going to have autism. That is absolutely unacceptable. So whatever the media say about me, whatever the politicians say about me, it doesn't matter, because I don't matter. It is what matters is the future of this country, and the future of this country is its children.
Folks, we're going to break. We're going to come back and give this guy the floor. Andrew Wakefield, AutismMediaChannel.com. We'll give you other sites as well. You need to make sure this film gets shown everywhere in the film festivals. It needs to be on TV. Regardless, there needs to be 10 million copies sold when it comes out on DVD because they cannot stop the signal. AutismMediaChannel.com. Right there, if you're watching us on TV, I'm pointing if you're a radio listener, Andrew Wakefield. That's a real man, folks. And decades later, being vindicated. The film they don't want you to see.
My phone rings, and it's Dr. William Thompson.
You and I don't know each other very well. You have a son with autism, and I have great shame now.
There's a whistleblower from the CDC who's going to come out and say that the CDC had committed fraud on the MMR study and that they knew that vaccines were actually causing autism.
My oldest son, Ian, was walking and running. After the vaccine, he was no longer able to do that.
So I called the clinic and I said, I think my child's had adverse reaction to those shots.
And then came the headbang, the constant banging against anything that he could find.
Right now, I'm sitting in a very pretty position in terms of providing you a lot of information.
The first thing that Thompson did was to plot a graph. Now, if there's no link between early MMR and autism, those two lines should track together. Now, they do track together until they get to 15 months. Then they separate, and they continue to separate thereafter. And they sliced and diced the data in an effort to get rid of that effect.
The relative risk of receiving an autism diagnosis was astronomical.
Wow. The CDC had known all along there was this MMR autism risk.
In CDC's judgment, the best public policy is to continue vaccination unchanged.
You who run our health agencies in this country, you have an obligation to make sure that these studies are complete, thorough, so that we have all the facts.
Oh my God, I cannot believe we did what we did. But we did.
Omission of crucial data, destruction of documents, misleading the Congress, grievous harm to innocent children.
Everything I've been telling my patients for the last 10 years has been based on a lie and a cover-up.
Parents should be able to count on federal agencies to tell them the truth.
In 1978, the prevalence of autism was about 1 in 15,000 children.
If we assume that things are going to continue as they have, we can predict that by 2032, 80% of the boys born will end up on the autism spectrum. Half the children, 80% of the boys.
It's a vast number of children who are being diagnosed with autism every day.
This is going to be a complete catastrophe if we just let it happen.
Facts. What are they going to do when 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 in the next decade or so is brain damaged? What are they going to do? The cover-up's not going to work. And obviously it's a cocktail of the pesticides and everything, but they've linked it. I've got a stack of New York Times, you name it, to gut flora problems and viral infections and brain damage. It's in the New York Times now, and Dr. Wakefield pioneered the research that he learned government had already secretly done. He's here to break it down. AutismMediaChannel.com. The film is vaxxed. Robert De Niro, under pressure, canceled showing at Tribeca, but says everyone should see it. Government officials have threatened other film festivals to shut it down. All of this is going on, and they don't even want folks to know there's ways to mitigate it. So, look, here's the deal. Why are so many Democrat and Republican Congress people going out saying we should investigate? Why are there CDC high-level whistleblowers going public? Because it doesn't matter how much propaganda you buy into. When your 18-month-old gets that third round of shots, and boys don't have the blood-brain barrier, and it's mainly boys, 80% or so, and they don't ever talk again, and they got to wear a football helmet for the rest of their life, basically, it'll wake anybody up. And that's why this is such a crisis. And that's the kids that get hurt the worst. A lot of kids just get other neurological problems or things that are lesser on the spectrum. So I'm going to try to shut up, Dr. Wakefield, give you the floor in this long segment we have, 16 minutes left in this segment, and then a couple other segments, to break down how historical this is. Because if you're a radio listener, I could go over these articles for TV viewers. I'm going to go through, while he's talking, a stack of mainstream news confirming what he said. And he just told me, yes, it's made the film get 10 times bigger, that they are censoring it. But this is such a big deal, because is it on purpose? Is it to dumb us down? Or can they not admit it, so they're doubling down? I mean, what's this really all about, Dr. Wakefield, and where are we going from here? And how do people get behind vax and make sure that every person that has children, about to have children, every grandparent, every school teacher, everybody that cares about children, which should be everyone, sees this film and sees all the scientists, the insiders. I mean, this thing deserves an Oscar.
You're very kind, Alex. Let me, first of all, break it down. This film is about MMR and autism. That does not mean that other vaccines are safe or other vaccine components are not linked to autism. This is based upon the information provided to us by the whistleblower. So it is based exclusively on facts. He gave us the analysis plans, he gave us the data outputs, he gave us the meeting notes, he gave us the internal correspondence, showing that the knowledge of this went right to the very top of the CDC. It went to Julie Gerberding herself, who then, of course, went on to become head of vaccines at Merck. So they knew about it. They all knew about it. This was a huge crime. So let me now break down the levels of the crime they committed. What did they do in terms of fraud? First of all, they changed the analysis plan. So in science, you set out a protocol. This is what we'll do. This is how we'll analyze the data, and we will stick to it. You do not change that plan when you find an effect that you do not like, and that is what they did. Then they decided to omit data, and they omitted data specifically on the very high risk in African-American children, African-American boys in particular, and in children who, of all races, children who were developmentally normal to age 12 months. Exactly the group we've been talking about, children who developed normally and then lost skills. They then decided that they had to destroy the documents in order to get rid of that effect, get rid of anything that might lead back to the fact that they committed.
Let's remember, you have all the whistleblowers, the documents. This is all admitted. You only focus on what's provable, and it's bombshell.
It's absolutely. We will only deal with what we can actually prove. And the value of Thompson as a whistleblower is, as he says in the movie itself, I will not give you anything that cannot be supported by the facts. So we have the facts. It goes way beyond this, but look, we don't indulge in speculation. So then the destruction of documents, Thompson realized that this would be a felony, that the Department of Justice were after these documents, that other people were after these documents in Congress, that to destroy them would be a felony, and so he kept his records. The rest of them thought that they had been destroyed. Then they went forward and they misled the Congress about the link between vaccines and autism. They misled the Institute of Medicine, the IOM. And the Institute of Medicine issued a report which said MMR vaccine is not causally associated with autism and no further funding should be put into investigating this link. On the basis of that, the vaccine court threw out 5,000 cases of children, plaintiffs who were in that court seeking compensation for damage, autism following vaccination. So they were denied their day in court. This was an obstruction of justice. So, Alex, on so many levels, this is a disgrace. It's a crime. It goes from being just simple fraud to a felony, and these people need to be held accountable.
You're looking at the eyes of the doctors, the scientists, the whistleblowers. They're so alive in this film because these are people that believed in the system, and when they finally saw the proof, weren't going to be part of the murder of millions of children's brains just here in the U.S. alone, tens of millions every year worldwide in this epidemic. And these industries like Bayer, who for a decade knew their factor 8 was giving millions of people hepatitis A, B, and C and HIV. And it came out in those court hearings that they knew and decided to cover it up because that would bring down the company. But finally it did come out and didn't bring down the company. But everybody overuses Hitler. But when you talk about Hitler killing millions of Jews and other peoples and attacking Russia and killing 20 million Russians and all these other incredible crimes, people never talk about the Russians. I'm not even Russian. I just think about, nobody ever talks about 20 million Russians died in World War II. My God. I mean, what they went through, and 600,000 Brits and 400,000 Americans, and both my grandfathers almost died just because they almost died, both of them. I feel an anger towards the Nazis. And then I feel this even greater anger currently that these big pharma people just want to cover this up. You're looking at one vaccine that, you 20 plus years ago documented was one of the worst, this triple shot, MMR, measles, mumps, rubella. But this really is genocide against our babies, mainly our young men. And then I see it in the fluoride studies, the vaccine mercury studies, all of it. Blacks, for whatever reason, higher testosterone levels, a little bit different souped up physiology. on average. It's devastating blacks, and you don't hear one black leader pointing this out. Your film gets into that. As bad as it is for boys, you look at the disproportionate towards African Americans, it's so sad. It's just epic what you're exposing. It's so huge. It's like the biggest thing I can imagine. I know I'm ranting, so don't pause or I'll jump in here. Dr. Wakefield, please continue. And also gave out the general site, autismmediachannel.com, the site that everybody needs to visit and retweet and just know they're censoring and know they're trying to stop. You're going to save children, folks. Vaxthemovie.com, V-A-X-X-E-D, V-A-X-X-E-D, Vaxthemovie.com. Dr. Wakefield, the pioneer, vindicated, on target. Continue.
Well, Alex, the credit really lies with the parents. It was the parents who brought our attention to this, and it reiterates the fundamental rule of clinical medicine. You listen to the patient or the patient's parents. No one knows a child like their mother, and they will tell you what happened. They weren't anti-vaccine. They went to be vaccinated on time, and this was the consequence. All they are doing is reporting.
I want clean vaccines. You make that point. I'm sorry. It's just...
No, absolutely. This is not an anti-vaccine movie. It is a pro-vaccine safety. It is about holding these people...
Don't give them liability protection. Don't put HIV in the blood product. Just don't screw us over.
Yeah, and you talk about the sort of major crimes against humanity. This is so many worse in many ways because these people were sworn professionally and morally
Hippocratic oath.
Protect these children. It wasn't that they were your sworn enemies. They were actually meant to be on your side. And that, for me, makes it so much worse because millions of children have been put in harm's way. If these data had emerged at the time and they said, we're really sorry, we found an effect, we weren't aware of it, but now we will do the right thing. We will do a bigger, better study to confirm whether it's true. And in the meantime, we will just delay the MMR vaccination until after 3 years, and then we might reduce the risk of this problem.
Like Japan did?
Absolutely, and they did not do that. Instead, they took the option of covering it up and putting all of these children at risk. Had they done their job at the time, the studies would have been done, and we would now know where we are. We do not. We are operating from an extraordinary position of ignorance in respect of vaccine safety.
You know, I have children, and I know I have 3 children, and they're 13, 11, and 8. I know a learned immunity is real. I know there's a science. I know it's 500 years old, smallpox. You know, back in England and back in Germany, they were doing it in France. There was a benefit. There was a negative. You did a cost-benefit analysis. But I just want them to have liability like all the other companies. I want to make the choice. I don't want to be made to do it. Things like tetanus. I mean, you know, I cut my finger off 10 years ago helping people with their boat on fire on Lake Travis, and I fell off and, you know, cut my finger off. They reattached it, but, you know, I went ahead and did this, you know, looked at it, tried to get one of the safer companies, you know, did a tetanus shot because I know that's a real issue. I understand it's a real technology, but don't lie to us and tell us there's no negative end and then just give these companies cover. But it goes beyond that. They know the Gardasil shot 10 years ago in studies in Texas and around the U.S. was causing deaths and autoimmune responses. They know it doesn't protect against human papilloma. It says it in the insert. There's thousands of strains, 4 to 10, depending on the vaccine. Now they're injecting all of Latin America with it, directly linked to infertility. And I know you've been attacked because you were so professional and had such great credits and were such a... they were scared of you because you're a handsome, smart doctor who pioneered things, Mr. Superman. They came after you because they knew you were so good. So you don't want to speculate, but it's not speculation. They know these vaccines are being used for social control. And I just look at, say, the Gardasil shot and all these countries that have banned it. I look at a stack of articles here we're going to cover in the next hour when David Knight comes in. New study shows mutated polio virus may be responsible for paralyzing more than 100 children in the past year, Daily Mail. NPR, new polio vaccine rollout comes with a big risk. The entire world has 2 weeks to switch over to new polio vaccine. Here's why they're recalling it. I mean, there's something else here. When these companies don't care, when they know it's hurting people, who are these CEOs? Because I'll be honest, I'm not a vindictive person, but you mess with children like pedophiles and stuff, I got an instinct to want to see you with up there with a rope around your neck. Dr. Wakefield?
Yeah, people keep talking about, when we get into this issue, what about polio? What about polio? What about the benefits of polio vaccine? And I'm saying this is not about the vaccine's ability to protect. This is about safety. Please, this is a completely separate issue.
How it's made.
Yeah, just because it protects, apparently, that does not make it safe. Thalidomide improved morning sickness, but it caused the most horrendous...
Millions of babies do not have arms and legs.
Absolutely. So let's separate these issues. Don't say to me, what about polio? Say, let's just separate this out into... It's like
statins will make you not have a heart attack, but they eat your damn brain.
Yeah, so let's focus on the issue. And this movie is about safety, and it's about the lack of safety studies and the corruption of safety studies at the CDC, and that is the issue we need to focus on. It is not anti-vaccine, and it's been portrayed in the media here, there, and everywhere as anti-vaccine.
Oh, it's like when I exposed the Saudi roll in 9/11 and the stand down, which I had from FBI and everybody on the show. They go, oh, you say jihadists don't exist. No. I say they exist. They're getting a paycheck from criminal elements, and that's all proven in the media now. Same deal. They go, oh, you're just anti-science. Baloney. If I can go get some shot that's proven overall to be very safe for my kids not to, die of some bacteria or something that's, drug resistant, I'll do it. But don't tell me there's no risk.
No, me and my colleagues and I were very, very pro-science. The trouble is the science has been corrupted, and now we have a formidable example of the corruption of science coming from the body itself, responsible for the care of these children, responsible for protecting them.
I'm all about air conditioning in my car. I'm pro-science.
Absolutely. So we need to completely rethink this, because in the end, Alex, the enemies of public health, the enemies of vaccination policy, safe vaccination policy, are the CDC themselves and the people who attrite public confidence in vaccination policy because they lie.
Am I wrong to say that the facade is imploding?
I think it is, and I think that it's amazing how one man can turn this whole thing around.
Let's talk about Robert De Niro, one of the top actors in the world, one of my favorite. He got backed off, but he at least said, hey, see the film. And I understand, people were threatening him and stuff. But have you talked to him or your crew talked to him? I mean, we know he's come out and said, see the film.
Yes, I have. And I feel extremely sorry for him. Not only has his life been plagued by autism in his son, but he's now confronted with this huge issue. He did not make the decision to withdraw the film from Tribeca. It meant a lot to him personally.
I didn't know that. The media spun it that he...
The decision was really...
We're going to skip this break. This is too important for these kids' future. To explain to us the whole Robert Duvall as much as you can tell us.
Absolutely.
Not Robert Duvall,
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro. Two great actors. I love it. Anyways, getting back to Robert De Niro and the whole Tribeca deal, tell folks that story because it's key to understand the censorship.
Yeah, it was the film. They loved the film. He and his wife loved the film. They wanted it shown. It was accepted for the Tribeca lineup. It was due to play, and then we were told, no, the film has been pulled. Came out of the blue. Censorship at a major film festival. When you start censoring at a film festival, then that's the thin end of the wedge. It then becomes propaganda. That film festival is merely an instrument of the sponsors and the message they do or don't want to get.
It's a very dangerous precedent.
Yeah, and what it emerges is that Jane Rosenthal, who's his business partner, really drove this issue to have the film withdrawn. And I think they made a huge mistake, because once you censor something, then everybody wants to see it. You do not tell Americans, you do not tell people what they will see, think, eat, inject into their bodies or the bodies of their children. And once you do that, then it opens wide up. And so we then had much more coverage than we would ever have had.
So the arrogance backfired.
It backfired completely. So we then got picked up by a bunch of film festivals, Houston being one of those, and then the mayor's office puts pressure through sponsors on the film festivals organizers to ban that. Now in Texas, for heaven's sake, censoring a film in the state of Texas where we value our
That's a whole other story. The high-level federal official threatens the film festival in Houston.
Incredible, saying we will withdraw sponsorship and encouraging all the sponsors of that festival to get in touch with the head of the festival to have funding withdrawn.
That's racketeering in my view.
That is racketeering. And again, it backfires. There's a protest outside the mayor's office. It will show in Texas, and now many, many more people will come and see it.
By the way, I'll rent out theaters for a week to show it. I mean, anything saving kids is important. That's another question. How do we get behind vaxxed? Folks are asking, when are they going to get to see it? Because I know it goes through a process through the film festivals. When can our viewers see vaxxed and show it to others they know?
It's now opening up in film festivals and film theaters across the country and soon across the world. It opened in New York. It's now just played in California, in Santa Monica and Pasadena. We were there. It's now opening in Arizona. It's opening up again in New York. It's opening up in Dallas. It's opening up in Plano. It is opening up across the country. So if you want it seen, then get in touch with Cinema Libre through our website, vaxthemovie.com, and contact us.
Vaxthemovie.com, contact and become a sponsor in your area to get this on.
And get the movie out.
And then you call the local papers, they cover it, and you reach your entire city. This is information warfare. This is trench warfare against these people. So exciting, Dr. Andrew Wakefield. looking at this, though, again, it goes to the instincts of the establishment. They always try to block things, and it blows up in their face.
Reminds me of The Exorcist. When The Exorcist came out and I was a kid, and there were priests outside the movie theater saying, with placards saying, if you watch this film, you will go to hell. And there were lines around the block, and people were saying, I don't know what this movie's about, but I've got to see it. You know, if you start telling people in a free country what they can and can't see, then they're going to go and do it. They're going to want it twice as much, and that is what's happening now. Well,
then, but what is the establishment thinking to get this canceled in New York and try to cancel it in Texas, and then it blows up in their face? Don't they understand that? I mean, the media has a 6% approval rating in a Gallup poll now. A year ago, it was like 14%. Don't they understand they are hated for covering things up?
I think they're more and more and more. They're at the behest of their sponsors, largely from the pharmaceutical industry, who are dictating what they will say, when they will say it, what their headlines are, what their editorials are. And that's a disgrace. Once you lose democracy, once you lose the free media, you lose democracy.
Well, that's what I'm scared of, ever being endorsed by the mainstream media. But they're so arrogant, they'll never do it just to destroy me. They just don't understand. It was like when I was on Piers Morgan about the whole gun issue, and he's got private bodyguards, doesn't want me, me to be able to be armed. He said, no, you're on 3 segments no matter what you say. But then when I brought up your sponsors are Prozac and other serotonin reuptake inhibitors linked to psychotic breaks, the insert says it. They walked in and said, he just attacked the sponsor, get him off. I saw them say it. He's off. And Morgan's like, really? I mean, they do not want that discussed.
No, it's incredible how the sponsors control. I used to interview with Sharon Laxon when she was on CBS, one of the most wonderful reporters in this
country. She exposed Fast and Furious, autism. She's a great patriot.
Wonderful. And they would, she said, 5 minutes after this interview, there'll be a call from the top floor saying, pull that segment. It's never going to play because our sponsors will pull their funding if it is. And so they control the media.
You experienced it.
At first hand.
Testify for a minute or two to that with a great reporter. CBS News broke so many huge reports. You were there when she was being censored.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd actually do the segment. It would go perfectly. It would go a great interview. And then she would say 5 minutes later, this is going to get pulled. I can predict it. And I think that's in the end why she just decided she'd had enough. She had to get out of that corporation-sponsored excuse for news. Excuse for news. It was just pathetic that she could not get these.
Well, remember when News Corps knew in government studies that the human bovine growth hormone or whatever was causing cancer and stuff and making girls be like 8 feet tall, 7 feet tall, they got shut down. And News Corps, it came out in the film, was like, we know it's doing it, just don't report it. It's like, but it's killing us. And what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, and I think that this is why news outlets like yours and others are really growing and growing and growing, because people have to turn to programs that they can trust, and they simply can't trust the mainstream media anymore.
Well, look, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not perfect, but I've got so many friends and family that had healthy boys who were at 18 months, got the 3rd round of shots, and they're just they have a seizure. They don't talk again for a couple of years. They're beating their heads in walls. We're about to go to break, do 5 more minutes with you. VaxTheMovie.com, Andrew Wakefield. But, I mean, I dumb it down. I've seen the studies. But as a doctor, as a guy that trailblazed researching this, why does it hit boys so much worse? I know most medical doctors say girls are tougher than boys. It's just true. Not tougher lifting weights, but hardier. Gunshot wounds, starving, you name it. Women are tougher bodies. I mean, is that right? I mean, why is it not hitting girls as bad?
Yeah, babies, as girls, babies have a lower infant mortality rate from infectious disease. They're tougher for some reason. And when it comes to vaccine components like mercury, we know that testosterone increases the susceptibility to mercury toxicity, whereas estrogen protects the brain. It's far more complex than that, but there is clearly this sex difference that puts girls at an advantage over boys. And if you look at schools, going back to an issue raised earlier, about is this just the thin end of the wedge? Is there a more pervasive effect of these vaccines? Then what happens if you're just shaving 9 points off a kid's IQ? How long will that take to detect? And if you look at schools, then it's boys who are failing and not girls. So is this more systematic? Is this more pervasive throughout neurodevelopmental problems? And I think it probably is.
Well, just like boys are hit or blacks are hit more, the more finely tuned hot rod a human is studying males and others, that's what it's hitting. These chemicals, these things are attacking, the more dominant, aggressive versions of the species, the leading edge, and then women designed to be able to really go through more toxicity, more adversion. They're able to survive. But as you point out, autism rates in women are exploding as well. We're going to go to break for 70 seconds, come back with the final 5 minutes with Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Incredible things happening. VaxTheMovie.com. We got some British Steel bringing us in. The real British Steel is here with us, Dr. Andrew Wakefield. VaxTheMovie.com. I'm Alex Jones, your host. Thank you for joining us. Now, in the last 5 minutes we have left, I didn't even get into all these articles out of the New York Times, you name it, admitting researchers find a link between gut bacteria and mental health. That's what you found. All of this coming out. How do people see the film? How do they get behind it? You know, I've talked about you've got all these kids at Donald Trump, you never see the youngest son. And I've talked to people that know him very well. I've talked to Trump as well. You know, the word is the son's autistic, just like Robert De Niro. I mean, the system's got a problem. If they think 1 in 50-something is causing a rebellion, what happens in a few years when it's 1 in 20, 1 in 10, 1 in 2? I mean, the vaccine execs, they can't go on forever.
What do? You have no standing army, no police force. You're either affected by autism or you look after someone affected by autism. The economy collapses, and Mark Blaxell makes this exquisitely well in the film. That what happens to our competitiveness as a nation?
Autism's the end of humanity.
It could effectively be, unless something is done to address it now. It drains every resource you have. And just take a school, for example. People say, this isn't my problem. My child doesn't have autism. He didn't have a reaction to his vaccines. But suddenly they find the sports programs being cut, or the special programs being cut for the excellent students. Why? Because it's all going into special education.
The giant new wings of the special ed. Just sometimes half the school is.
That's right. And I hear teachers telling me time and time again, I've been in this job for 50 years. I never saw this. Now we have special classrooms dedicated to this. And as you say, special buildings being created for special needs kids. It is extraordinary, and yet it seems to be completely ignored by the powers that be.
I'm sure it's all accidental. I'm sure it's not a silent weapon for a quiet war. I'm sure it's not eugenics. I'm sure it's not a soft kill weapon. Well, regardless, folks should learn the facts for themselves. From your research, MMR is linked to the most problems?
It's linked to many, and we have no idea quite how many, because the vaccine program is now so complex, with mercury in the flu shots, for mercury being given, for heaven's sake, to pregnant women. What? That's unthinkable.
They've never done that.
No, for aluminum to be put in there, for formaldehyde and antifreeze. And so it's so complex. It's such a toxic soup that we really have no idea what precisely in any one child is causing this problem. But we do know that the proximate cause, according to the parents time and time and time again, is an exposure to a vaccine.
I'll be on vacation, I'll be at the movies, anywhere, and you see an autistic child. Sometimes they'll have 2 in a family because, you know, it's a genetic proclivity that whatever's in it hits them worse. They tell them, oh, it's genetic. Yeah, like you may smoke 2 packs of cigarettes and genetically you get lung cancer, but it's the cigarettes that do it. And they'll go, no, you know, it's always he, 18 months old, 3rd round, had a seizure in the office or in the car or that night, never talked again. It's always the same story.
Yeah, as Polly Tommy describes in the movie, it's very, very clear. This is what happened. The doctors then admit that it's the vaccines, and then suddenly the medical records of that child disappear.
I don't know if you saw it. We did an interview about 6 months ago. Rob Dew did, and David Knight did as well, with whistleblower head nurses, where they go and they say in the preemie area, they go, okay, we're ordered to give them vaccines. They'll stop breathing and die. And they gear up and get ready with the respirators and the defibrillators, and the kids die, and they try to make them live. And they're like, they follow the orders to like commence the execution, but then they try to save them after.
Yeah, no, I saw this the other day. A NICU nurse, a pediatric intensive care unit nurse, said exactly this. She said, I can no longer work in there because we are mandated to give these premature, underweight babies the full vaccine schedule, and they go into respiratory arrest, and I can no longer do this.
Imagine you've got like 50 little babies in there, and you get the order, whether they're 6 pounds or 5 pounds, 3 pounds, give them the shot. They die. They're dying. You're trying to resuscitate them, and then, wow.
It's tragic. I mean, it's sad. And do I know whether that is the case, whether scientifically this would stand up to scrutiny? All I know is those studies should and must be done, but they're not being done.
All I know is NICU units all over the world say, we get the order to give the shots, we try to hold it back, we get ready to try to save the kids after following orders. VaxTheMovie.com, VaxTheMovie.com. Dr. Wakefield, Godspeed. Congratulations on a job well done. I believe you and others are turning the tide.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Great to be on.
You bet. I'm going to say bye to you and see you off. David Knight is coming into the other studio. Tell your friends and family and neighbors, tune in now. This is a war. We need your help. These children need your help. Infowars.com. Special Facebook mentions live with Billy Corgan tonight.